You're listening to The Dan Nicholl Show.
My guest on The Dan Nicholl Show this week is a very old friend of mine with whom I have something of a mixed history. We've had many good times, and then there was also the time when he attempted to kill me, something he has still not apologised for, and I very much doubt it's going to happen today. Butch James, welcome.
Well, it's good to be here, Dan. Welcome to Durban. I see you
I've dressed for the occasion.
But and the aircon, we've turned it off just to make sure that you're very welcome here in Durban.
I should have lost about 11 kilograms by the time we're done with this.
I actually need to stay in here for a couple of hours afterwards, I think, just because I've also got about 10 to go.
I probably should have messaged you before I came down, although that said, if you're coming to Durban, the weather is generally going to be hot and humid.
Yeah, I think you checked and it was raining, and even when it's raining, it's nice and humid. So, yeah, it's always T-shirts and shorts here in Durbs.
Which you have and I do not, as I melt away. I might even have to take the shirt off at some point, in which case, as well as sending our ratings skyrocketing, you might actually see there is still a Butch James shoulder-shaped indentation in my broad chest after the aforementioned attempted homicide on a Mauritian beach where you and your chubby and rather average-looking mate, Rake Neertling, conspired. If I look back, I can't remember anything I could have done, Butch, that might have justified this assault. It's not like I've ever been rude to the pair of you on stage or made any comments you might have taken umbrage at. But you guys decided to turn a very gentle, friendly, warm, engaging game of touch rugby into a let's see if we can hospitalise Dan.
Yeah, I think we need to do that every 2 or 3 years because of the abuse we do take from you. But no, I honestly thought it was your idea and that it would make for good TV, which it did. So I think it all worked out fine. And you're still alive.
Yeah, let's clarify this. The idea was that I was going to catch a ball from Rake, stop. You would then walk up and kind of fall on me in what would be a warm cuddle.
I got the wrong memo.
And instead you hit me and I was driven back about 10 metres, much like many rugby players of your generation had as well under the Butch James attack.
Yeah, and there was no card, so it was absolutely perfect.
Aside from that, that was a really, really good trip, and it was a very vivid reminder of Butch James, and it's something that a lot of people who get to know you well often struggle to get the correlation between, because off the field, there is no more chilled, relaxed human being on the planet. Half the time, I'm not entirely sure you're awake. And then you get into the rugby field and you still look really calm and relaxed. And then next thing you know, you're standing over the body of a 130 kilogram loose forward who's made the mistake of running into you. Tell me about that difference between Butch on the rugby field and the Durban beach guy.
Yeah, I think it's just my competitive nature. I think once I know it's competition time and time to play, I think something does switch on and I do change a bit. So, I think in everything I do, I mean, even if I do play golf, I mean, there you can't really show your competitiveness. So I'm always joking around and smiling and laughing. But inside, when I'm playing golf and I'm not winning, I'm hurting and not very happy, you know. But obviously on the rugby field, you can take out your frustrations in other ways and to try and assert that that yourself over the opposition. You can actually get stuck into them. So I'm very competitive, and it probably shows when I'm on the rugby field. But off it, I do like to chill and not get too worked up.
I remember doing an event years ago with some American football players. We were in Philadelphia, we were doing a sports conference, and the one guy, absolute gentleman, arrived in a 3-piece suit and was just kind of Downton Abbey stuff. And he spoke about how he had a bit of a red mist, and I didn't believe him. And then I went to watch some highlights of his career where you just see him parallel to the ground heading for people's throats. And there is something that clicks, but it can't just be a red mist. You've got to click while still focusing all of that aggression and turning it into the kind of World Cup winner that you were.
Yeah, I think the red mist was also it's quite a good few words there. I think whenever I was on the bench and watching a game, that's actually when I used to get quite frustrated and really worked up. And then when I eventually get on the field, then I had quite a bit of built up anger and aggression in me. And then that's when I normally did something really silly and ended up getting a card. So it was always easier for me to start a game, and then you're in the game, you're not really watching the mistakes from the ref and getting frustrated with maybe your team or the opposition, and then when you're in the game and in the moment, you're not really seeing those different things to get worked up, and you're also obviously burning off energy. But on the bench, it's a different story. So I would like to see a stat of every time I came off the bench and I had a bit of red mist because I'd been getting worked up, and then I would do something silly. So
the one-man Bob squad.
Exactly, and it took me a while to actually realize, especially at fly-half, that you shouldn't be doing those sort of things. You need to keep your mind clean and clear and make most of the calls. So instead of looking to take and make these big tackles, they were always going to be there in a rugby game. You're always going to get the opportunity to make one, but not to go out and look for one, and to remain clear-headed and make sure you're making the right calls for the team.
You ended up doing that, and we got to watch you do that because you broke into rugby circles, but it might have been a little different because your dad played football for South Africa, your brother Elton, I know your parents massive Elton John fans, hence the name, your brother Elton played golf for South Africa and hits the ball obscene Wilco Nyanaba-like distances. I've played golf with you, you're not far off, and I've seen you kick a football around, and there was some football talent there as well. Was it ever going to be anything but rugby?
Yeah, when I was growing up, obviously my dad, having played soccer, I also was playing soccer, and I loved soccer, and was probably my favorite sport. Then I went to high school, to Maritzburg College, and we used to play club soccer, where there was never soccer at schools in those days. So we used to play club soccer, and then by the time we got to high school, the Sunday soccer league, we would arrive for a game, and half the team, the opposition, would arrive, and you'd end up not really playing. So it became a bit of a waste of time. So that's when myself and Elton, actually, we both gave up soccer, and only in my post-matric year, when soccer was back at schools, then did I play a little bit again. But by then, rugby had caught me, and the bug had bitten, and then I chose to go the rugby route. I was also a cricketer, and in my post-matric year, we had an end-of-year rugby tour to England, Ireland and Wales, and it was the same time as the Nuffield Week was on. So our first team cricket coach, was the Nicholl School's cricket coach as well, and he phoned and asked which I would want to do, the cricket or the rugby, and I said if I make the A-team cricket, I'd love to rather play the cricket, and he told me on the phone I was going to make the B-team, and then I said, okay, well then I'd rather go pick someone else, I'd rather go on the rugby tour, and that's actually when my rugby went well. I'd played a bit in the second team, a bit in the first team that year, but that end of year tour is when I really played well, and that's when I made the decision to try rugby.
So a bit Skulkbergerish like, in that he ended up at university on a cricket scholarship, and then became a great rugby player. Do you ever wonder what might have happened if you'd gone to that Nuffield Week instead?
I do often think about it. Look, I was never a great cricketer, but you never know how you might mature and grow when you leave school. I certainly did that as a rugby player. So, yeah, I think I would like to, if I had the choice now, I think I'd probably be trying to chase the cricket and play a bit of T20. But, I loved my rugby career. I made so many great friends and so many great memories as well.
So you're in post-matric, you're about 23, 24, you're having a look at this career. At what point did it start to dawn on you that not only is this great fun, and being in the rugby team gets you lots of attention from all the right people and it's quite cool, but it can actually be what I do?
Yeah, but it was only, so when I finished post-matric, I was still not wanting to leave school. I could have stayed there until I was 23, 24, Dan, but I wasn't sure what to actually do after school. So my folks allowed me to take my first year out of school off. I used to travel down from Maritzburg to Durban for rugby practices, played for Rovers. I got noticed by the under-21 coach, Swayze de Brain at the time, and he brought me into the Talent 21 team that first year out of school, and the following year I got offered a contract at the Sharks. So at that stage I was just loving playing, trying my best to make an Natal under 21 team, and then from then it's almost snowballed and went pretty quickly until I became a Springbok. But the following year I got offered a junior contract, and then that's when it became a goal of mine to make this what I do for a living. So from then on, it grew, and then I was fortunate enough to stay at the Sharks for a long time, and then obviously off to Bath, back to the Lions, and then one last season at the Sharks before I retired.
I have this vision of a group of young rugby players, and they're all sort of 6'5", 6'6", all chiselled and focused and steely glares, and all have names like Buxton. And then along comes this Durban kid, probably arrives at rugby practice in board shorts, pair of slops. You've just come off the beach, and everyone's having a bit of a look down their nose. And 10 minutes later, you've waltzed through the entire defence, scored 6 tries, and they realise there's something rather special. You're not, in many ways, the typecast rugby player. You're very different in a lot of ways, and I think those are often things that contributed to your success, of the person who you are as well as the talent you have. Did you ever feel that way? Did you ever feel that I'm a bit different to the rugby mould?
Yeah, it was pretty different. I mean, that first year that I did come down and play for Rovers, and then have to come to under 21 practice. Most of the under 21 squad then had been pulled in by the Sharks on contract, out of school. So the halfway through the year, I actually moved to Durban. I had to get a job. I got a job delivering flour with one of my mates who had a flour mill. So then I would deliver the flour with him, and I would arrive at practice all covered in flour. So it was pretty tough.
So just to confirm, you'd arrive at practice covered in white powder.
That's right.
All right, and it was flour. It was flour, okay. Just make it clear it was flour.
If we were selling something else and it wasn't flour, I would have retired a lot earlier, I think. But so that I would arrive covered in flour, start training. Obviously, like now in Durban, you sweat quite a bit. So by the end of it, I was almost like a covered in dough, just because of the flour and sweat mixing. But so it was a bit different, but I think it was good. It made me hungry and made me want to do it for a living. So by the second year, I gave up. I resigned from my flour job because I was on contract then.
I can sense the regret there that you missed out on becoming the flour tycoon of KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah, look, my other friend who also does the flour now, he's still going and still doing it, and I think I maybe should have stuck with it for a bit.
Every year we see new talent come into the game, and you always wonder, is this the next big thing? From the player perspective, was there a game early on in the career where you put any of the self-doubt, any of the imposter syndrome to bed and thought, you know what, I can actually do this, I belong here?
Yeah, I would say it was probably the 2000 Currie Cup year. The Super Rugby 2000, the team hadn't done very well, and Rudolf Straley came in as the new coach just before Currie Cup, and then we actually had trials. So we had a trial game, and a lot of us youngsters played against almost the Super Rugby team, and we ended up drawing that game with them, and that's where a lot of us got the opportunity, and I think Rudolf put us forward to be in the team in the Currie Cup, and that's when you probably, I certainly started really believing that, look, I do deserve to be here, and then slowly I started shifting my goal to the Springboks. So once I got into the Currie Cup team, started playing nicely, playing against all the other teams, and realizing that they weren't that much better than me, that's when I started thinking maybe I should shift my goal now to the Springboks and make that my next goal.
That was a very different time. If you play now in Russie's era, it's all hugs and they sing Kumbaya and they skip around wearing tie-dyed outfits under the moon, and it all works very well. You were at a time where if you were the new kid, you got beaten to a pulp, you got completely put in your place when you arrived. There was lots of initiation. It was a very, very different world. How did you fit into that? How did that work for you?
Yeah, it was quite a big shift. In 2001, when I first went into the Springbok squad, then we all met at the Beacon Owl, and there was a whole bunch of Springbok legends that I'd grown up watching and
these are now your new teammates.
And now I felt like I was back in standard 6 at high school, like almost wanting to bring them their coffee and breakfast in the morning. But yeah, slowly they do bring you in, and as soon as they do accept you that you're good enough to be in the team, then you do feel like you are welcome and one of them.
Who was the most terrifying person to line up with in that squad?
I think the one guy that was pretty, but he's actually a hell of a nice guy, like most of them are, was Yapi Mulder. I was pretty scared of him, but no, ended up being a great guy. So yeah, but there were quite a few different ones. Even Russie, actually, he was in the team at that time, and he whenever there was a team meeting, he would look for me when he arrived in the room and make sure he came and sat next to me. And then his whole goal for the whole video session was to make me laugh. So it was really tough. The new kid in there, you're trying to behave, trying to not get the coach's attention, and there Russie was trying his best to make me laugh and to get me into trouble.
When you think back to that determined clown sitting next to you, and then you see not just one of the rugby greats, but one of the sporting greats in terms of coaching of the modern era, do you see the same person?
I do. I mean, I know he was bugging around a lot, but somehow he was still listening. And when it came down to the tactics and how we were going to play, he would chip in every now and then. He was most of the time trying to make me laugh, and then every now and then he would add a few words of wisdom that were absolutely spot on. So he always had the knack and the technical side, and was always so clued up. And even the way he played, as a flanker, he was never the biggest guy either, although he used to get stuck in and make some proper tackles, but he was just a clever rugby player, and that obviously shines through now as a coach.
You played in an era of some extraordinary players, including a very good friend to us both, John Smith. And whenever I do an event with Barney, two players' names come up in his collection of anecdotes. Bucky's is the obvious one, and I think every second one of John Smith's stories is about Bucky's, and they all seem to be different. There are so many of them. But then there's also the name Butch James that comes up regularly as being one of the great tourists, one of the great teammates, and a guy who was very good at getting into trouble, but also somehow getting out of trouble, which seemed almost as masterful as your abilities on the rugby field.
Yeah, I think whenever there was trouble, my name would often come up, and
unfairly so.
No, 50% of the time it was unfairly so. So that's when I was able to get out of it. But yeah, I think that's what it's all about. It's about creating those memories and creating the team spirit. I think we all play the game because we love it and want to enjoy ourselves out there. There's obviously a lot of pressure, especially when you are playing for the Springboks, but I just think if you're enjoying it and got a smile on your face while you're doing it, you're going to play much better, and also the memories are going to be a bit better.
To the rugby memories in a moment. First, though, and taking into account that this podcast is mostly listened to by young children, what are a couple of those misadventures in the Butch James rugby life that you look back, part of you thinks, geez, I can't believe we did that, and the other part thinks, gee, I'm really glad we did that?
Yeah, there's a number of them. I've driven a few taxis, a few buses.
You got to elaborate on that. I've driven a few taxis and a few buses. More detail, Andrew James.
Look, I was never caught for this. Hopefully the police don't still come after me. But there was a place in Cape Town, Billy the Bums, which was pretty close to Newlands. It was, I think, Robbie Fleck, Bob Skinstad,
Corne Krige, and Peter Dixon.
Yeah, they all teamed up with the guys. Yeah, Derek
I was the very first resident DJ there.
Oh, really?
And still the worst DJ they've ever had.
No, well, it was a great spot. And we obviously, when we played the Stormers, we would go there. And if you remember, there was a staircase that led down to the road, and when it was time to leave, I was walking down there, and a taxi driver was walking up asking if anyone needed a taxi. So when I got to the street, I saw his taxi there. I climbed in, the keys were in, I started it up and took it for a spin around Cape Town. So yeah, I actually ended up parking it at the hotel, and I just left it there and went into the hotel, went to bed. So, I hope that doesn't come back to bite me, this story. We might have to edit.
If you are the taxi driver in question, please get in touch with the show. We have Butch's home address for you. And the guys you had as your lieutenants, Barney speaks of you as being one of these great on and off the field teammates. Who were the guys for you when I'm rooming with him, I'm on tour with him, this is going to be awesome?
Yeah, I think somehow, obviously as a fly half, I always need to have a good scrum half and a good centre and I was fortunate to have those guys around me all the time. When I started at the Sharks, I had Craig Davidson, who was a wonderful player, and Trevor Holstead on my outside. Then I moved to Bath. I had Michael Claessens and Ollie Barkley. And then with the Springboks, obviously, one of the best rugby players to ever play the game, Farid Dupree. And on my outside, I had Jean de Villiers, Frans Steyn. And I mean, wherever I went, I was just fortunate because look, I don't think I was the best rugby player, but I was in the right place at the right time, and I had great guys around me, and those guys certainly did help me. And somehow those guys were also always my best mates, were the 9s and the 12s. So I'm very good friends with Craig Davidson, Trevor Holstead, Faree, and then probably one of my best friends from rugby, besides Barney and Skulk, is Jean de Villiers. So somehow I got attracted to the guys that would help me on the field, and they also, the scrum halves are normally the naughtiest guys on the rugby team, except for Faree. He's a really good guy, and Jean de Villiers, probably one of the best characters I've ever played with.
And you played with all of those guys through some important times, including 2007. And it was a year that meant so much to all of us. In fact, we're sitting in Durban at the moment in 117% humidity and 41 degrees Celsius. And I still remember running through the streets of Florida. I think there was a gentleman who was looking after cars, and I shared a bottle of champagne with him, having run out of wherever we'd watched the game, as you won that extraordinary match. When you go back to it, we've already spoken about you being relaxed to the point of unconscious half the time. You just always looked like nothing in the world could possibly worry you. When you woke up that morning in Paris, knowing that there were 80 minutes between you and a possible World Cup medal, surely even Butch James had a few butterflies.
Yeah, I did. I had a lot of butterflies. I think, there was I thought there was a lot of pressure on us. You know, we had, myself personally, I'll talk about my personal feeling first. I'd played in a lot of Currie Cup finals, 2 Super Rugby finals, obviously the one just before that when Brian went and scored, and I'd never won a trophy. So at the World Cup, I would wake up in the middle of the night, and the first thing that would jump into my head was Brian scoring that try and us losing the Super Rugby final, and I would stay awake for another hour and a half just thinking of that. So for me, the Rugby World Cup, it was huge pressure. I mean, we had played England in the pool stage. We had beaten them 36-0. Now we're playing them in the final. So everyone is just expecting us to win, and the pressure was all on us. So for me, it was a huge relief when we ended up winning that game and getting the trophy, you know, because it was the monkey off my back, if you want to say it like that, because I'd played so many finals and I didn't actually care about the other finals then, because I'd won the biggest one that you can win. So yeah, there was a lot of pressure, and the butterflies were huge. I might have been might not have looked like it, but it was I felt I was really nervous for that game, and luckily we came out on the winning side.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice of word, that relief was the first sensation, because we would think, well, it's joy and it's excitement and it's cartwheeling up and down, but if you're under that much pressure, relief is an understandable response.
No, it was a huge relief. And look, Brian still pops up every now and then in my nightmares, but I can easily fall back to sleep now. So it definitely was a huge relief. And after that final, actually, I got interviewed by SuperSport, and you remember Tex, he was in the background, and I got interviewed, and they asked me what the party was going to be like that night. So I said, it's like Stevie Wonder, it's going to be all night long. So I got back to the change room. I was rooming with Bob Skinstad at the time, and we were sharing a beer, and I said, hey, you won't believe what I said on TV. You know, they asked me what the party was going to be like. I said, no, it's going to be like Stevie Wonder all night long. And he looked at him, he said, what? Lionel Richie sang that song, man. So, I mean, I went from this high of winning the World Cup to being brought back to size by Bob pretty soon afterwards.
I've spoken to a number of guys in that squad. It was a decent night of celebration that night.
Yeah, it was good. It was, obviously, we played the game at 9 o'clock at night. So the game probably finished around 11 in the change rooms, and then back to the hotel. We probably only got back to the hotel at 1. So I can't remember going to bed, but I'm sure it was pretty close to 6 o'clock in the morning. But we all had our families there. I had flown my mom and dad with my brother out for the quarterfinal. So behind the poles in that quarterfinal after Fiji took the lead there, all I could think about was, geez, what are my mom and dad going to do in Paris for the next 2 weeks if we have to go home today? So luckily
That's pretty good motivation.
Yeah, luckily we beat Fiji, and then getting back to the hotel and having my whole family there, and my wife now was my girlfriend then. She was also there, and her dad was there. So we had a great party, and it was lots of fun.
Is it still something that flickers through the memories fairly often, that amongst everything else you've done, not just in your career but in your life, you will always be Butch James, Rugby World Cup winner?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously always forget about it, and you carry on with life, and there are other things to do, and you've got kids now, and you're chasing them around to sport every now and then, and it's just lovely to think back to it. And then when you ever do think of the World Cup, or you hear the word World Cup, you always do think of your own one. So like you say, I'll always be a World Cup winner until I die. So it's just a great memory, and I'm very proud to have been part of that team and squad.
I'm just looking through the rather long list that your legal team sent through. I'm not allowed to mention the Bulls-Sharks Super Rugby final. We can't mention the hot tub in Stockholm and the air hostesses. But we can mention something that you and I have had a bit of fun with, because the journey after rugby, especially when you've had the success that you have, when you've won a World Cup, it's a high that's always going to be almost impossible to replicate in terms of visible success. Things like having a great family and wonderful kids, etc., certainly can fill that void. But you've won a World Cup. What can you do that is similar? And you've now got this really cool journey that you're on, again with John Smith, with Skulk Brits, with an Australian New Zealander, which I cannot understand, but all of these great rugby players. And you are now not just Butch James, Rugby World Cup winner, but you are Butch James, brandy entrepreneur.
Yeah, I'm not too sure if I'm an entrepreneur, like a brandy connoisseur, but we've gone on this entrepreneurial route, and we've started this brandy brand along with Rob Haynes, who was the mastermind behind the whole thing. And it's been fun so far. I always joke with you and say that they give us free product, and that's what tipped me over the line. But it's been great. I mean, we got 3 different versions of the brandy now, and it really is. I mean, I'm a brandy drinker, so I say I'm not a connoisseur, but I do think brandy is delicious, and especially our Avant one. I think it's a great brandy, and we recently launched the VS. We started off with the VSOP, and then the 15-year-old, which won 5 stars at the Platters Guild. So we're really proud of it, and we're hoping that it can keep going for many years to come, and we can get given free brandy for many years to come.
This company is either going to list on the New York Stock Exchange or go horribly bankrupt. And if it's the latter, it's because you lot are drinking every cent of profit you make.
Yeah, look, if that's the case, it's fine. But no, hopefully it does keep going. It really has been a lot of fun, and it's a great brandy, great brand, and it's also been great to work with you mentioned the guys, a couple of Australian New Zealanders that were our opposition, and you don't really get to chat to them and spend some time with them. So being in a partnership and almost in their team now, it's been really cool, and it's been good to get to know those guys as well.
The Kiwi in question is Justin Marshall. We will have had him on the show last year, George Gregan amongst the others. It's a really cool collection of guys. And I think it's guys united not just by rugby, but by a challenge that a lot of you face. I mentioned you have that pinnacle of a World Cup. Whether you've won a World Cup or whether it's just you have been a very successful sports star, life after sport can be a tricky one. How difficult has that been for Butch James, life after rugby, and I guess finding your sense of purpose, finding your space after you've become defined in the eyes of so many in such a particular position?
Yeah, it certainly is tough, and it hasn't been any different for myself. It really was tough for myself to almost find which avenue and which angle you want to go for, and I think I mentioned it earlier that enjoying playing rugby and having fun was really important for me, because then I knew I would play better. And I think it's similar in business, you can't always enjoy what you're doing, but if you are enjoying what you're doing, you're going to do better at it. I mean, I would like to be a golfer, and I really like playing golf, but I'm not going to make any money from that. But so it was a tough transition for myself. I tried my hand in a few different things, and I'm now got a small investment company with a friend, and we do private equity, venture capital sort of investing, and I'm absolutely loving it. So, like I said, it takes a bit of time to get into and to find out exactly what you want to do, especially someone like us that were playing sport for most of our career, and then to find something that you really like and enjoy, it can take a bit of time. So a lot of those guys have been unfortunate not to find something and are really struggling at the moment, and I think it would be nice if somehow we could find something to help those guys decide and choose the way they want to go once they retire.
I still think the flower business is what you'll get back to eventually. I think it's in the genes.
I'm in. I think we can have a meeting after this.
But before we wrap up, because judging by your outfit, you've got a beach to get back to, and I need to go and sit in the fridge for the next 3 days.
It's like a wet T-shirt competition.
Oh, and it's doing neither of us any favours. A final chance here to look deep inside your heart, Andrew James, and realise that your attempt to possibly maim me permanently on a sun-kissed Mauritian beach all those years ago, as we gathered with our Laureus Sport for Good family, we're both ambassadors for Laureus, that it was wrong, that you did something that you have always felt bad about, and that you would like to now, on this platform, ask for my forgiveness.
Now, I'd like to apologise, Dan, but it is
for not hitting me harder.
We'll keep it. I'll apologize for now, but we might be on a beach again. So you just behave yourself when you get that microphone, okay?
Oh dear! I do mention Laureus. You, of course, were a Laureus World Sport Team of the Year winner, and that's one of the many accolades, along with the World Cup and so many others, that you have to look back on. It's been great, not just catching up with you, but sharing some wonderful memories. There are more to have, and as soon as this is done, we can sit down and work out the basics for our flower business.
Let's do it.
There we go. He's a Rugby World Cup winner. He's a phenomenal amateur golfer. Could have been a great footballer and could have had the largest flower business in the Southern Hemisphere. He's also my very special guest on the Dan Nicholl Show this week, Butch James.
You're listening to The Dan Nicholl Show.